Greetings, 'tis Atom at Irata non grata, and been a little bit slow on the channel lately just because I've been super busy. That happens when you're working 4 jobs, basically. But one of them is somewhat related to Atari, actually, but not something I can really talk about much yet, but it's not at Atari. Anyways, there was this Atari news that came along, or I guess I'm not fully understanding yet why they aren't, how they're going to do the Infogrames stuff, or use that label versus the Atari label, whatever. As I think I discussed in the past, or you've probably already heard, some time ago, not too far back, Bubsy was purchased. The IP of Bubsy was purchased by Atari, and so it's now under their label. And they've announced this Bubsy in the Purrrfect collection. Is Bubsy... Oh, okay. I didn't read this first, and so that almost confused me for a second there. But is Bubsy a celebrated icon from the mascot wars of the early 90s, or a platforming punchline? At least they're being self-aware enough on that. Bubsy in the Purrrfect collection explores the franchise's troubled history and enduring popularity, a playable history that includes games, artifacts, and interviews. What could possibly go wrong? At least in that regard, I'm glad that they're approaching this with some humor. The thing that made me cringe a little bit when I saw it is that the developer is Limited Run Games. And as you might know, they've dropped the ball really hard in some instances recently, such as sending out CDRs for games that are supposed to be very limited, and people had the expectation that they would be professional. Now, granted, this looks so far like it's just a digital collection, so I guess in that regard you can't screw that up, right? But, you know, when I... seeing this now, what could possibly go wrong? It seems to be a double entendre. It's like, you know, because Limited Run Games is here doing this, maybe it's going to not work out so well. But we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, perhaps they've learned their lesson and will improve in the future. Planned release date 2025. Same release date as Metroid Prime 4, which I'm very excited about. Far more than I am about this one, but there's a billion people out there already talking Nintendo stuff, I guess, and nobody really watches me for my Nintendo stuff. But, oh yeah, I guess there's a little bit more here to look at as to what's going on with this one, so... I already read that part. All the games have been carefully updated for modern PCs and consoles using Limited Run's proprietary Carbon engine. I have no idea if that's good or bad. Along the way, the team was able to smooth out some of the game's rough edges. If that holds true, good. At the helm of the project is Limited Run's Audie Sorley, a producer, author, Bubsy World Heavyweight Champion, arguably the world's foremost expert on the furry franchise. Okay. Together with the team at Limited Run and Atari, he has created the ultimate retrospective celebration of Bubsy, the 3-foot 6-inch tall, 80-pound bobcat with a pet armadillo named Arnold. What could possibly go wrong? And then this describes what the Carbon engine is, using emulation as a base. And okay, I'd have to look into it to see if people have good or bad thoughts about what the Carbon engine is, as I had never heard of it before. But at least looking at these screenshots of what's being offered, yeah, this one, I remember, okay, so the only Bubsy game I have ever played is the one on the Atari Jaguar. And it's actually one of the very few games that I never decided to buy. There was a point in my life where I was trying to have a 100% complete collection of the Jag. And I had a friend who I had evangelized the Jaguar on, and he also was kind of getting into that. But there were a couple of games that he grabbed that when I played them, it's like, maybe I don't really need this. And Bubsy was one of them. Syndicate was another one that I didn't care much for. And so it was those 2 games, maybe one other, that I never actually grabbed and completed my collection. But I did play it, and... yeah, as far as the troubled history goes, just the weirdest thing about that one is just the floaty physics, and it was very easy to die, and very annoying character in my view. Didn't seem charming or endearing. But I do remember seeing screenshots of Bubsy 3D for the PlayStation or the PSX, if you want to call it that. But again, never played that one, and I guess it was, you know, the PlayStation's answer, not really, to Mario 64. But as you could also see from here, I had no idea there was a Bubsy game on the Game Boy. I did have a Game Boy back in the day, like the green and whitish, or green and grayish screen. But you know, it had a ton of games, and I didn't collect all of those, or at least in the later 90s. That's when I finally got an Atari Lynx, and that's the one that I started collecting for. I was more into the Game Boy in the early 90s, and then the Lynx in the late 90s. But Bubsy never did show up on the Lynx, which would make sense, you know, given that Bubsy's a bobcat, you know, and obviously Lynxes aren't bobcats, but, you know, they're related, right? But I think this is the SNES version. It certainly looks like it. This does not look like the Jaguar version, which at the very least the Jaguar version looked fine for what it was back in the day. It didn't look exactly like the 16-bitters in that it had higher resolution, higher color. It had some pre-rendered sprites in it too. I'll put some footage up here that you can see of me badly playing that in an emulator. Yeah, what do you think about Bubsy in the Purrrfect collection? Will it be perfect? Will it not be perfect? Do you even care? Is Bubsy one of those franchises that you just kind of ignored, like I guess some of us did? And so we'll see. I mean, I guess for Bubsy fans, I don't know how many of you out there. If there's tens of you, if there's hundreds of you, I'm sure the sales on this will tell that for sure. Does this excite you? Do you hold any reservations? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll catch you on the next video, which will probably be footage from Battle Morph. And so I've finally gotten around to recording some of that. That's one of my favorite Jaguar games, and I played it quite a bit and recorded it for you. So we'll see about that popping up sometime this week. But until then, we'll see you around.